Hello everyone, I'm going to show you a picture of something and I want to see if you can identify it. Do you have any idea what that is? They are not seen very often anymore, especially by young students. You may have seen one in your lifetime, you may have not, but what this is this is a library card catalog. This is the information, the index, if you will, of a library. All these little cards are in accordance to one book. So each book has a little card. So if you're in a library and you're searching for a book, you would go find all these little index cards to find out more about the book and where it is. Now all of this is computerized. So this hasn't been done in a long time. Even our library in Leota does not have a physical card catalog anymore. It's all computerized. But in the olden days, I think, let's say pre 1995, depending on where you were in the country, maybe a little bit earlier than that, this is what you would have to do as a student for research. You'd have to go to these little cards and you'd have to find books and you'd have to find information that was located in your library. Anytime you were assigned any kind of paper that required sources or information, you would go to the library, you'd dig through these cards, you'd find the books, you'd go find the books, you'd read the books and figure out if they're useful to you. That was the research process. However, today we have sort of a different take on the card catalog system. This is how I refer to it now. That's really what it is. It's prehistoric Googling. This information process has been drastically changed by the internet and by computers in general. So first there was the card catalog, then there was the computerized card catalog, and now we have access to the internet, which changes everything, because research is an important thing and it remains an important thing, but it's very different now. In the past, whenever you went to the library, you were searching for a needle in a haystack. You're confined to those four walls and you had to find what information was there. So you might have one needle, you might have a few, and you'd have to judge that information and figuring out how it could be useful to you. But it was a needle in the haystack kind of process. But now, in today's world, it's much different. What you're searching for is the best needle in a stack of needles. You have access to so much information. It is mind-boggling and unreal. In your pocket right now, on your cell phone, you can call up pretty much any piece of information that you need to. So it's very, very different as a researcher. You are not confined to the limited resources of a single library. We have a library. We have interlibrary loan where we can access other libraries. But in your pocket right now and on every computer, pretty much there is access to the internet. And that is what a lot of what you're going to be doing now and in the future is research on the internet, and you're going to be finding information on the internet. But this causes its own problems. It's very, very difficult to sort of sift through all the needles and find the best needle that you need. And it's something that students have a hard time with. For example, if you are writing a paper about the civil rights movement and you get a broad search, the civil rights movement, you get 100 million results. You have to sift through and sort through 100 million results. Now, hopefully, you're going to be giving search topics that are a little bit clearer than that, but on the whole, that is very, very broad. How many of those sources are legitimate and worth your time? How many of those are just trash sources that are never going to be acceptable for a reference in a paper? Because the information that you do have matters. Even if you just look at the top three, history.com, wikipedia.org, and infoplease.com, those are the top three sources, but are those the best sources? And the answer is definitely not. The answer is definitely not. So how do you choose which sources are best? You have to think critically about your sources and evaluate and analyze them to be sure that they are the best pieces of information that you can find. Because I can guarantee you that there's better information about the civil rights movement than what's on history.com, Wikipedia, and infoplease.com. You have to dig deeper. You have to find better pieces of information. The trick now is not finding information, it's finding the best information. And this is challenging for students. This is hard because it requires you to do some thinking about each and every little source and every little detail. So it is kind of a laborious process, but it is worth it, and it will make your papers better. And more generally, I think this is a tool for life. You have to be able to look at something and figure out whether it's valuable or not. Whatever kind of piece of information that is. So the tools I'm about to show you today apply in my class, but they also apply in every other class, and they should be able to apply to everyone's life as well. So what I'm going to show you today, I'm going to call the CRAAP test. And yeah, it's pretty funny. It was developed by the Merriam Library at California State University, Chico. So this has been around for a few years, for about 5 years, and I modify it a little bit where it's more appropriate for high school because this is a college, so we don't need everything that the college level needs. But what you're really doing with the CRAAP test is using a set of questions to help you determine if a piece of information is, well, a piece of, you guessed it, crap. And so I don't encourage vulgar language in my classroom, but I hope that the CRAAP test sticks out in your mind a little bit about how to judge information, how to evaluate and analyze it, and think critically about the information in front of you and to see which pieces are the best, okay? So the CRAAP test, it's an acronym. You have the C stands for currency, the timeliness of the information. Relevancy, the importance of the information to your needs. Authority, the source of the information. Accuracy, the reliability, truthfulness, and correctness of the content. And purpose, the reason the information exists. That makes up the CRAAP test, and there's all these little subset questions in there that I'm going to run through very briefly to give you a brief overview of this. This shouldn't be our only introduction to the CRAAP test. We're going to go a little bit more in depth, but this is meant to provide a brief overview about how each of these pieces work. And we're just going to go ahead and take it from the top and start with currency, the timeliness of the information. Information moves very rapidly now. The world is much different in 2015 than it is in 2010. If you went back in history, in 1795, it wasn't that much different than 1790. Things don't change as fast, or things weren't changing as fast as they do now. So, but anything online, you need to pay attention to when it was published or posted, if it's been revised or updated, and whether or not your topic requires current information, right? If you're writing a history paper about George Washington, it would actually be better to have sources from 1776. But if you're writing about teenage social media use, anything beyond probably 2010 is going to start to feel a little bit dated. You're going to want current information. Are the links functional? Forgot my question mark there. That's the hyperlinks. Do the hyperlinks work? Can you click on the hyperlinks and go somewhere else? All right. Relevancy, the importance of the information for your needs. There's a bunch of information out there. You've got to find the information that's right for you. Does the information relate to your topic or answer your question? Sometimes students find great sources and they have great information, but they're really not what they need. It's a little bit tangential to the topic at hand. So you have to make sure you stay focused. Who is the intended audience of the information? This is a big thing because the intended audience can let you know if it's at the appropriate level. If you're writing a paper about butterflies, you could go across the street to the elementary library and find 15 books about butterflies, guaranteed. But those books on butterflies wouldn't be appropriate for a high school level research paper. They're too elementary, right? Have you looked at a variety of sources before determining this is the one to use? You've got to look at a lot of different things before you get sold on a source. You don't want to just take the first option. You want to make sure you consider a lot of different sources before choosing the one that you're going to use. All right? And this is a big one. Would your instructor, i.e. me, view this as an appropriate source for a paper? You need to look through my eyes. Students in general have a much lower threshold for the appropriateness or relevance of a source. Students think pretty much anything goes. I, of course, don't. So you need to imagine me looking at the source and saying yay or nay. You really have to sort of raise the bar on what an appropriate source would be for yourself. All right, authority, the source of the information and their qualifications to write about it. Who is the author, right? Who's the source? Who's the sponsor of the website or the article? What are the author's credentials? Are they a scientist, a doctor, a journalist, or is it just some random guy in his basement bored and typing away on the internet? Are they qualified to write about that topic? Do they hold degrees? Is there contact information? Generally, you can, on a website, it'll tell you who wrote a post, and if you click on, they usually have a hyperlink on their name to their contact information. that's a good sign. You want to be able to contact them. Anonymity is one sign that something may not be a great source. You need to make sure that these people are being upfront about who they are and taking credit for their information. It's easy to say something if there's no repercussions for you saying it, but if you put your name on something, it's a whole lot more meaningful. And does the URL reveal anything about the source? I'm going to go ahead and take a little short digression here about URLs and domains and websites in general. So, because students sometimes get this confused, and I think this is because a lot of your teachers have sort of lied to you and told you some things that aren't true. So if you look, .com, .org, .net are open to anyone. A lot of teachers think that .coms are bad and .orgs and .nets are better, but that's totally false. Anybody can go online and buy a .net or a .org. It's just the same as a .com. It makes no difference in practicality. Nobody is going to really look at these three and see much of a difference. So these aren't any different at all. These two, .gov and .edu, those are special. Those indicate a higher quality source because they're more reliable, because they're coming from the government and higher education institutions. So those mean something. But .com, .org, .net, all the same, level playing field. .gov and .edu, a little bit better. All right. Also, free blogs aren't a good source of high quality information, and I'm talking about things that are hosted on Blogspot or WordPress generally. There are probably some exceptions to this rule. However, generally, the better the information is, someone's willing to take credit for it, and they're willing to plop down the money it takes to build a little website, right? So just these really denote random people commenting on random things without much credibility or qualification. So keep that in mind. Always try to find something a little bit better than Crazy Eddie's Random Thoughts at blogspot.com. All right? So accuracy. This is the reliability, truthfulness, and correctness of the content. Where does the information come from? Is the information supported by evidence? Is this just random opinion, or do they have studies and statistics and arguments and evidence and reason? You really have to take a close look at that. Can you verify any of the information? I think this is one thing that students don't like to do, but that you need to do. If someone says X, then you need to go Google X and see if you can find somebody else saying that too. See if it's reliable, see if it's truthful, or if this is the lone wolf saying something totally out of hand and very crazy. All right, go verify the information from a different source. Does the language or tone seem unbiased and free of emotion? You're looking for dispassionate observers, people who are objective and level-headed and talking about things, instead of people who are biased and very, very emotional. Right? Are there spelling, grammar, or typographical errors? These matter quite a bit. If somebody's not willing to proofread their stuff, then I'm not sure that their stuff is that great in general. And there's always exceptions. Everybody makes a typo every once in a while, but it's something to be aware of. All right? Purpose. This is the big one for me, I think. If you can find out the purpose of the information, the reason why that information exists, then I think you're going to realize a lot of things about something. Right? What is the purpose? Is it to teach, inform, sell, entertain, persuade? Right? If somebody's trying to sell you something, obviously they may not be so honest about it, right? They're only going to highlight the great things about it and not the bad things. If they're trying to persuade you, that means that they have a viewpoint, they want to draw you in, and again, they may not be totally honest about all the pros and all the cons. Do the author's sponsors make their intentions or purpose clear? If they're up front saying, hey, we're trying to persuade you to do something, that's a little bit better than saying, oh, I'm not trying to persuade you, these are just the facts, and the entire time they're not giving both sides. Right? Is the information fact, opinion, or propaganda? Hopefully you've seen those terms before in your lower level classes and sort of have a good feel for the differences between those. Does the point of view appear objective and impartial? This is important. You want objective, impartial, unbiased information. That is the best kind of information to have. Are there political, ideological, cultural, religious, institutional, personal biases? You want to look out for those. And pretty much every piece of information has some of these, and so it's a little bit hard to say, well, oh, this is a good source or this is a bad source. You just really have to look and see if it's extreme. If it's extreme, you can't use it. Right? So that is the CRAAP test in general. That is a brief overview of the CRAAP test. What I want you to do is I really want you to think about those things and think about how you can apply those to websites that you come across or information that you come across. And to really give you kind of one example, I'm going to go ahead and take you on a little journey onto the internet to show you something that I think it'll illustrate this very well. So earlier I showed you a Google search of the civil rights movement. If I Google Martin, let's say somebody's writing a paper on Martin Luther King, right? Google Martin Luther King, you get some good sources popping up right away, maybe. All right, so you get Wikipedia. Of course, Wikipedia, great for background information, not something you want to cite in a paper. Biography.com, history.com, same thing. Nobel Prize, that might be worthy. Then you see Martin Luther King Jr., and the URL is his name. So that's got to be good, right? So let's click on that one. Let's see where this goes. All right. Well, it's attention students, so they're trying to talk about students. Some bad language, which is not good. Then you see who's publishing this information. Well, this is interesting. Stormfront, hosted by Stormfront. So I've never heard of Stormfront. What is Stormfront? Stormfront. Let's just check their Wikipedia. See who these people are. Stormfront is a white nationalist, white supremacist, and neo-Nazi internet forum that was the internet's first major racial hate site. So you have a major racial hate site publishing and owning the domain of one of America's greatest civil rights heroes. Obviously, a student could be duped into using some of the information here if they weren't paying attention, and we know that this information is totally illegitimate and should be totally discounted based on who these people are, why they exist, and their probable motivations for publishing said information. So here's what I want you to do. To prove that you watched this video, and I'm pulling up the wrong window, to prove that you watched this video, I want to make sure that you have this copied down. I want you to have all of this written down so that you know what each element of the CRAAP test generally is. You might think of some of the few important subset questions and write those down as well. But make sure you have a piece of paper with this written on it so that you're explaining the CRAAP test to yourself. That way you have a copy of this and it sticks in your head a little bit. So make sure you have that piece of paper with that information written on it by the time you come to class when this video was assigned as being due to be watched. Have a good one, everybody. We'll see you later.